That's what fell.
Margot, you're on. Your mic is on.
Sorry.
No worries. Okay, everyone, welcome to the Committee of the Whole public session for Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we will do a roll call of trustees. Trustee Collard.
Yes, with my mouth full.
Awesome. Trustee Reynolds.
Hi, I'm here. Good to see everybody.
Trustee Daniele.
Thank you, I am here.
Trustee Oliver.
Hello, everyone.
And as we get through the list here, I'm going to switch gears and mention that since we're in Committee of the Whole, it is less formal. So we'll be using first names, and we will be using the hand up function when people would like to speak and to vote. So we don't have to manage any of the forms or anything like that. Andrea.
Hello, everyone.
Margot.
I don't usually happen that early. Hello, everybody.
So, Jean.
Hello, good evening.
Okay. Heather and Tanya will be joining us shortly. Kelly, Bandy, and Casey will not be joining us this evening. Curtis, hello, welcome. Can you say who's here from the staff team?
Thank you so much and good evening. Thanks, Tracy. This evening I have alongside me our Associate Director, David Bogue. We have Ian Cadet, our Executive Officer. We have Fred Thibault from our General Manager of Planning. Jewel Amoy, our Equity Advisor, is here as well. And those are the ones that I see so far. And so back to you.
Excellent. And I just want to welcome Heather. Trustee Heather has joined us. And we have some guests joining us as well. Leslie and Anne are here from Halton Learning Foundation. And welcome to Michelle, who's also here from planning. And I think that's everyone that's in the room right now. So we will go to Heather. Are you okay to give the land acknowledgement, or Donna is ready to go as well?
Maybe we can get Donna to do it just so that my internet doesn't crack.
Sounds good.
I'm at home, but it seems weird.
Welcome home. Go ahead, Donna.
Thank you. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis, from the Anishinaabe to the Attawadarand, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these tree lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us.
Thank you so much. So we will go to item 1.4, which is approval of the agenda. Would anybody like to make, thank you very much, Andrea. Is there any discussion on the agenda as circulated? Anything that was missed? Or I would draw people's attention to item 3.4.6, which is role of the trustee, and that will be a no report, but it can stay on the agenda. The group just hasn't met yet, since our meetings have been so close together, September and October. So other than that, are there any notes or changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, you can raise your hand physically, or yeah, sounds good. Trustee Collard, gotcha. Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the consent agenda under item 2.0. We have the minutes of Committee of the Whole meeting from September 29th, 2021, and that was attached. Is there anyone who'd like to make a motion regarding those minutes? Oh, thanks, Leah. And I'm going to fill in the blank that the motion is for approval. So is there any discussion on the minutes as circulated? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, and that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And for people who are having bandwidth issues, I can add them up with just the little hand function too, if that's easier for you, so you don't have to go off and on camera, but whatever works. So we'll move on then to presentations. Under 3.0, we have 3.1, Halton Learning Foundation, Leslie Mansfield, and may I just welcome Trustee Tanya has joined us as well. Welcome. And I would invite Leslie and Anne to jump on. And the presentation from Leslie was in your folder. for pre-reading. Thank you so much, Leslie. Welcome, a big welcome. Thank you for all that you're doing, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. It's so nice to see everyone again, not in person, but in person. And thank you very much for the invitation to be here this evening, and also welcoming our chair of the board, Ann Cezak, who has joined us as well. With permission, I'll share my screen and see how that goes. So I'll just present now. Okay, so can everyone see the presentation on the screen? Is that a yes?
It's perfect.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I can't see anyone with my camera angle right now. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Halton Learning Foundation, though I believe everyone on the call today is, we are a registered charity that has been around for almost 20 years or so. And our sole mandate is to raise money to support the students and the schools of the Halton District School Board. And our mission is to eliminate financial barriers to education and level the playing field for all HDSB students. We do that in 3 ways: scholarships and bursaries for graduating students, school grants that provide programs and resources that are beyond the provincial funding that's received by the Halton District School Board. But our core program is eliminating barriers. And these are emergency funds and subsidies to help children living at or below the poverty line. And that's about 1 in 10 HDSB students, so they can fully engage in learning. I'll start off with our school grants and our engagements. And HLF 20 years ago or so, we were originally established to help fundraise for schools that had needs or wants beyond their budget. So when schools need extra funds for resources, it often falls on the parent or the school community to raise that money, and not every school can fundraise like others. HLF is an important source of funding for schools, and it's one way that we try to level the playing field. Annually, HLF offers schools the opportunity to apply for grants through Halton Learning Foundation, except for last year, because that was a rather exceptional time. But typically, we give out over 100 grants to HDSB schools each year, from a few hundred to a few $1,000s per project. And over the past 16 years, HLF has supported schools with over $6 million in grant funding. This year, HLF has approximately $130,000 in grant money available for schools, $50,000 of which is directly from the RBC Foundation to support mental health initiatives. As you can see on the screen, HLF's grant stream mirrors that of HDSB's strategic plan. And schools will be advised tomorrow that HLF's school grant program is now open, and the application deadline will be November the 16th. Our second area are scholarships. And HLF scholarships are funded by donors from the community, and they can be a significant source of both financial and moral support for graduating students, especially those from low-income circumstances. This past June, 76 HDSB students were the recipients of HLF scholarships worth more than $112,000, and that number grows every year thanks to donors in our community. And finally, our Eliminating Barriers program. This is our most critical work. It provides emergency funds and subsidies to help ensure that no student in our community is left behind because of lack of financial resources. Whether it's $5 for a bake sale, $250 to help with purchasing a bike, or maybe $40 for soap, toothpaste, a toothbrush, and other toiletries, HLF is here, and we answer the need within a few hours of receiving a request from a principal. You'll see the number of students that are provided with emergency funds has been growing over the past several years, with the exception of last year. And over 1,200 students were provided with emergency funding in 2020-2021, which was lower due to the previous year because of virtual learning, but we still provided over $240,000 to young people in all the areas of Halton. And so far this school year, the demand is more than double what it was last year, which is always a good news and a bad news story. Our job is to get out to as many kids as we can through the principals, the guidance counselors, the secretaries, CYCs in the school. And I'd like to give a big thanks to all the HDSB parents who responded to our call during the back to school time that we just finished having. And this year, we've supported 221 students with over $53,000 in funding. And that's so much higher than it was last year. But again, it's good news because we're getting out to more kids. There are students in our community, and I know that I've introduced them to you in previous presentations, who miss days or weeks of school because they have lice and the parents can't afford the treatment. There are teenagers who are working part-time at Tim Hortons and Shoppers Drug Mart and Fortino's who are literally helping their families to put food on their tables. There are 16 and 17-year-old high school students living on their own in basement apartments, in shelters, or they're couch surfing because their parental home is too dangerous. And there are kids in our community who've never been able to go on a school field trip because their parent or guardian doesn't have $10. Low-income students are at risk of falling behind because they don't have enough food in them to focus on learning, or they don't have the basics they need to get to school, and they don't have the same opportunities to fully participate in learning. HLF's goal is to reach more of these students every year so we can ensure as many kids as possible get a financial boost to stay in school and fit in with their peers. We know there are around 6,500 students, if you use the 1 in 10 who live at or below the poverty line. We're only reaching 1,500 at the very most. We need to find those kids and help them. The more students HLF supports, the more funds we need to continue saying yes to every student. And the neat thing about saying yes is that it also means that we can say thank you to all those who support HLF, including individuals, many HDSB parents, HDSB staff through payroll deduction, and also schools. We have family, community, and corporate foundations, service clubs like Rotary, and so many companies. As HLF does not receive funding from United Way or the province, each of you is making a difference today by inviting us here this evening and raising awareness to make sure that we keep helping young people. The need is great, especially this year, and your help is critical. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have some questions. Go ahead, Jean.
Well, thank you very much, Leslie. Thank you for your presentation tonight. I'm particularly interested in the statistics that you were able to share, and also in the notation of the elevation of the need in our communities. I have seen the rise in the need over the years that I've been a trustee, but I know that these are unprecedented times, and I'm sure that this is more than ever whatever would have been expected in terms of the support being requested of the HLF. Leslie, can you outline for us as a board of trustees what we could do to support the HLF, and indeed what the board, the Halton District School Board, could do? Really, you are our charitable fundraising arm, and I know that to a person in the Halton District School Board, we're all keenly invested in helping in any way we can. So if you could give us some ideas, I'd greatly appreciate that.
Of course, and thank you for asking, Jean. When it comes to support from the trustees, I know that you have your super council meetings, your parent council meetings. You can invite us out there, as many of you have done in pre-COVID times, so that parents can learn where they can find support if they are running into an emergency financial need. We are available to come out and speak at any time. And now that we're all virtual, even makes it kind of easier in some ways. In terms of supporting through payroll deduction, we have some wonderful people out there, the trustees, the HDSB staff who do help with payroll deduction. Thank you. It is tremendous, and we certainly would welcome anyone else who'd be interested in helping out HLF on a monthly basis or as needed. It's easy to sign for payroll deduction, and that can be done at any time. We do have our campaign in February, but anytime you'd like to be able to join up on payroll, that would be tremendous. We do a lot of posting on Twitter, on Facebook. If you'd like to follow us, many of you already do. You also include us in your newsletters out to the community, and we can certainly help provide content for those newsletters as well. And if you happen to have a business and you are a supporter of HLF, and you might want to let your clients know that you support Halton Learning Foundation. We have a small fundraiser coming up in November, in early December, and it's our calendar that we were using for our Smile Box last year. It was such an incredible hit that we're doing it again this year, and that's sponsored by Johnson Insurance. And the calendars are going to be going out for sale starting in, I'm going to guess, early December. And if you're interested in buying those, you just have to go onto our website. Hey, there you go. Yep, Tracy's got one. And it's a really neat curated smiles and thoughts for the year. So we have that as well. And those are the major things. As I lose my voice, one moment.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up for the moment, so I just wanted to see if I could find today's affirmation for everyone. I am a couple days behind, but here we go. So I learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear, and that's a Rosa Parks quote. So every day, I have favorites that I have kept for the whole year. So I just want to say that I personally really enjoy that calendar and look forward to the next one as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And there are, I mean, if there are ways of being able to just amplify our voice beyond the trustees and the superintendents, and that's what you can do each as a trustee and as a superintendent, to be able to amplify our message, because a lot of parents don't know about us until something is sent through School Messenger, and that has been an incredible help. And we'd like to thank the Halton District School Board, because that's an incredible support for us, so that parents know that we are there only for kids in their school in need.
Okay, Jean. Or not, we just can't hear you.
Sorry. Thank you, Leslie. As one of the 3 trustees on the PIC Council, I'm thinking that would be also another area that would be helpful to have your presence at. And I'm wondering, this may be a question for Senior Admin, Director Ennis, Associate Director Bogue. Would there ever be a time that a press release might be sent out speaking about the Halton Learning Foundation, or speaking about the impact that association has on the Halton District School Board and its students? Just wondering if that's another avenue of amplifying the message.
Thanks, Jean. Certainly we work very closely with Leslie and Anne to make sure that we amplify a number of initiatives that they are putting forward. And I know that we are currently in conversation about some things that they want to do. And certainly we are being critical partners in making sure that this message gets out to everyone. In terms of a news release, that's something that we could discuss with our communication team around how we do that. But we value the partnership, as I know you do, and we continue to amplify. I don't know, David, you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I would just echo your comments, Curtis. I think we have done some campaigning before in the past, and we certainly do promote with our administrators at our family of school meetings. And I think Leslie's been invited to attend some of those as well, to make sure it's on our admin's radar as well. And they will sometimes send things home to their own communities as well.
Go ahead, Leslie.
And that was one thing I wanted to mention. Thank you, David, for raising the family of schools. We're hoping to be able to get out to the family of schools again this year. We know that there are new admins. We know that there are new people in the board who may never have had a foundation. And when you look at the school boards in Ontario, and you look at the school boards in Ontario, only 16 or so have a foundation. And they're all in Southern Ontario. There are no school board foundations in Northern Ontario. And we're still looking at half of the school boards, the public school boards in Southern Ontario, that don't have a foundation. And if admins or teachers come in from those boards, they won't know that there's a dedicated charity to help their students. So having an opportunity to be able to go to family of schools would be tremendous. Thank you. Again, in the new year, thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other speakers at this point in time. So we can, sorry, I'm speaking.
Tracy, we're having a hard time hearing you, Tracy.
I was talking quietly, sorry about that. So I don't see any other speakers with their hands up at this point in time. So I would just encourage trustees to think about your own activities and networks, as I know that you do, whether those be trustee related or otherwise, and how we can support HLF, and just turn the message to Anne and Leslie to say thank you so much. And we know we have kind of direct communications line to you both, as well as the staff members at HLF, which is we're really grateful for. So when those ideas come up, we can jump on them. So look forward to the upcoming fundraiser and all of the other good things that we can do together for students. So.
Thank you so much, Tracy, and thank you very much for inviting us here tonight. And I know we had 30 minutes, we're at 6:26, so we'll say good night and enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Will do. You're welcome to stay, and if you don't, you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much. All right, good night, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we will move on to the second presentation, which is item 3.2, the long-term accommodation plan, specifically public feedback. And I'll turn it over to Fred, Michelle, and Lorene.
Thank you, Tracy, and thanks again, everyone, for taking the opportunity again to just hear what's going on with the LTAP with regards to feedback. So tonight we'll have just a brief presentation outlining some of the key themes, much like we did last year, and also a little bit of some thoughts of what we're looking to do for following iterations of the LTAP. So I'll start by sharing a screen here. All right, so I want to confirm everybody can see before starting up. All right, wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, so first and foremost, again, I really want to introduce my staff, Lorene Choi and Michelle Dagwar, and also those that aren't in attendance tonight. We have Marie Hoekstra, and we have Mitch Gundy, which were really crucial in developing this LTAP, as they have been in the previous years, and continuing to do the good work in advancing this project. So again, I want to thank them and commend them for the hard work that goes into it, because it is quite a feat, I'll say. So with that, tonight's purpose is really to present the results of the feedback that we've collected over the last few weeks prior to this moving forward to board approval next Wednesday, October 20th. In terms of the agenda for tonight, what I'd like to do is just go over a brief update or a reminder as to what we did to notify our communities as to the feedback portal. We'll talk about the responses that were received by municipality, area of concerns, who's reading it, as well as what are some areas that we can improve upon in the LTAP in future iterations. We'll close off by discussing staff conclusions as to what we think about the report as it stands moving forward for approval, and what we're thinking of doing in next iterations, and then the next steps as to where we're going to be between approval, if the board decides to approve the LTAP, as well as releasing it, a wider release to our community partners. In terms of notification, following the initial presentation of the draft LTAP on September 22nd, we a couple days later released a news release to the community advising that the LTAP was ready for review and commenting. We also did some media blasts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram on the board's account, just notifying, as well as providing a home notification advising parents that this was available. So the feedback portal was open between the September 24th and October 6th at the end of business day. In total, we gathered a total of 298 responses. Some general themes that we saw is, again, the majority of it is in the town of Oakville, and we'll get to that in a few. The majority of respondents have a child in the system, so they have a direct stake in what we're planning within that document. And again, the big topic is utilization pressures, capital initiatives, as well as programming. So with regards to distribution by municipality, of the 298 responses, as previously stated, town of Oakville was the one that received the most number of comments, 131 in total. But if you look at it proportionate to the population, generally speaking, I'd say that the response rates are plus or minus representative of the total population of those areas. So, over time, maybe what we'll see is a higher distribution depending on what growth rate we see in these municipalities. So we're quite happy with those results. We took it a step further again this year, and we wanted to see, where in the community are these responses coming from. So what we did is we took the first 3 letters of the postal code and we mapped them based on forward sortation areas. Which you can see with the little key map up here, just shows the different geographic areas. And what we're seeing is that predominantly the comments that we're receiving are from the urban areas, and I'd say probably most weighted to the areas that are newer. So I'd say within the last 30 to 0 years in age. So we're seeing a lot of interest within those general areas, probably primarily the growth areas. So this map represents the size of the circle, represents the number or responses within that general area, and its concentration relative to the overall response rate. So the smaller the circle, the fewer responses, the larger, the bigger. In terms of the results, as I mentioned, the vast majority are HDSP parents, so over 90%. So again, we are reaching our target audience, as well as other members that may have some interest within the community. But again, we're pretty happy that the main respondents are for our parent community. In terms of overall satisfaction with the document, 236 are either very satisfied or neutral on the document, so general acceptance of what we put forward in the public sphere. And of those, 62 of the 298 were not satisfied or very much not satisfied, somewhat not satisfied or not satisfied with the document. So if you were to look at that, we have generally a 79% approval rating on what we've put forward, which I'd say is generally good. Given the circumstances, we always like to see higher, but at least we have a good idea that we're generally in the right direction. So with that, what we'd like to do is just dive in and see, okay, well, where are some of the problem areas that may have people less satisfied with that document, with some of the personal comments they have, and some of the challenges that they feel that they're facing as a family within our community. And similar to previous years, what we're seeing is that of the top 3, 2 of them are utilization related, and accommodation pressure related. So overpopulation of schools, as well as the over-reliance on portable, or the perceived over-reliance on portables in school communities. So that remains one of the main areas of concern, especially in high growth areas. Otherwise, there was a lot of discussion with regards to the availability of programs, whether or not there were enough programs in their neighborhoods, or if some of the programs were a little bit too distant to their home relative to where the school was located. So some of the problems we have with more regional distributed programs. So those were some of the things that we saw with other concerns. Other things such as school class sizes and things of that were also part of those comments. So some of it was accommodation, some of it was programming, some of it was staffing. Otherwise, all the other challenges and responses that we saw were all generally below 10, and they're all listed there. So it's a wide array of concerns or things that people are considering, not all directly related to the LTAP. Donna?
Thanks, Fred. I'm wondering, did you notice a preponderance of concerns coming from a specific municipality? Because I know you've got was overpopulation more of an issue, say, in Milton than in Burlington, or did you disaggregate the data in that way?
So when we're looking at it, so the data, the feedback survey that we provided, we had a section that says, why are you dissatisfied with the document, or what are some of your concerns? And a lot of that qualitative data, what we found was, I'll say this, it's a little difficult to ascertain exactly where that is. We only collected the first 3 letters of the postal code. So if they weren't directly mentioning a school, that was difficult to kind of extrapolate. But some of the things that were mentioned, I'd say, generally speaking, there's schools that are in newer areas that are reliant on portables, and schools that are in older, more established areas, such as South Burlington would be ones that had portables for a very long period of time. So I'd say, to your point, Donna, yes, primarily in high growth, high pressure areas, but there were other schools that were discussed, 1-offs or 2-offs here and there that didn't necessarily fit that bill either.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you for that question too, Donna. Like I mentioned earlier, we got a lot of the qualitative data from our overall responses. So of the 298, about 57 provided comments on what they liked about the LTAP. A lot of people did appreciate the fact that there was a lot of data available for them. So, it's all there. They liked the fact that they were able to provide feedback and, voice their opinions. A lot thought that the document was clear and easy to read, well formatted. And other ones were just some general comments overall about the formatting and what have you. And then of the 57 responses, they also provided some commentary as to what they would like to see. Some actually asked for additional data with regards to accommodation program information. So that one I'm trying to get a grasp of where that additional data could be. There's some areas we can definitely improve, but I think it ties a little bit to point number 2 as well, where it could also be looking at how do we improve the ease of access to some of that information. A lot of the comments where I saw is like they're having difficulties in really narrowing down what's happening in their community particularly. So that's something that we can look to improving as to, whether it's an easier index, is it something that, they can better locate themselves within the context of the plan. So we're certainly looking at that. The other part of it too, also tied to accessibility, is just the overall size of the document. Is there a way to get them the information they need in a more straightforward fashion? So those are some considerations that staff will be looking at as to, how do we achieve that? And then one other interesting comment that I did find interesting, and I think that there's some opportunities there, is what's the impact of some of these projects that we're proposing, like capital projects? And some of the comments I read were interesting in saying, like, this whole what if concept, like what if it happens or what if it doesn't happen? Maybe something we can explore too is certain scenarios, just to provide some expectations for community. If this doesn't happen, this project doesn't get funded, this may be some of the things that we may witness. We can't crystal ball all of it, but at least we can provide a little bit of clarity of, as an example, if this school doesn't get funded, does that mean that we have to be more reliant on portables, or do we have to, do some redirection or things like that? So at least there's an understanding that something may happen. So we'll have to take that one back and try to figure it out more, massage it, and see if there's opportunities. But I did find that to be an interesting one that we didn't see in previous year. So all in all, though, with regards to the general direction of this current LTAP document and the projects that we're proposing, both in terms of new capital projects, boundary reviews, and capital project boundary reviews, generally, I think that there was support for it. Some of the concerns where parents were looking for some action in certain areas, we did capture it with our long-term list of accommodation and boundary reviews, so that's good. I don't believe that there's any further modifications needed for this iteration. What we'd like to see in future iterations is really trying to explore ways to make this document even more accessible, and maybe find new innovative ways in leveraging the technology that we do have now in a more virtual environment to make that data more accessible, while still relying on some of the more traditional and paper formats as well. So some ideas that we're going to be brainstorming and planning services over the next couple months as we prepare for the next iteration of the 2021-2022 LTAP. And lastly, so after tonight's meeting, after we have our conversation, we'll bring this forward for board approval or consideration for board approval next Wednesday. And subject to trustees approving the plan, then we will distribute it to the community agencies listed under the Community Planning and Partnerships Guidelines as per ministry guidelines. And then we'll proceed in early winter this year, as opposed to spring, with the Community Planning and Partnership annual meeting, just to identify available spaces. So we're going back to our previous stream where we're doing it in the winter months. With that, happy to take any questions. Jean, you're first up.
Thank you very much, Fred. I wonder if you could go back to that screen that you had that talked about the common themes, and there was like a little bar graph. It's about 4 or 5 screens back, I think.
This one here, Jean? On my screen, it shows the bar graph. I'm hoping that that's what you're seeing.
I think it hasn't quite refreshed yet.
Here, let me reboot it here.
Yeah.
Did that to me earlier today.
The last couple, there was a bit of a lag.
Oh, yes. Yes, Fred, that's it exactly, the feedback results. Fred, could you comment to us, are these themes coming up in the same proportion year after year after year from our communities?
I'd say the top 3, yes. They're the ongoing top concerns in terms of portable use, overpopulation, and programming. It's I'd say it's similarly to last year, and maybe I'll defer to my colleagues Lorene and Michelle, but I believe that those are the top typically. Michelle, Lorene?
We do hear a lot from the community with regards to overpopulation in general, just through inquiries and programs. So I would say yes.
Okay, thank you. I was also just wanting to comment, Fred, that you did address it at your very last comments, and that is one of the folks from Burlington said, sending the LTAP out more frequently and taking our input. I guess looking for maybe not that one big home run each year with the presentation, but rather trickling it out. Is that something that we could see happening in some manner or another?
I certainly think there's some opportunity. Like, we don't want to give consultation fatigue on this either, but we could certainly have it where we're looking at certain key milestones and maybe explore them. Or an alternative plan that we're exploring too is is there a way that somebody can access their location, similar to like Google, you look for an address, you say this is my address, and then it could at least say, well, here's your ERA or SRA, and here's what's happening in your community. So that way it's something that's a little bit more direct, so that they can say, more specific to them is, well, I live here, and here's my areas of impact. So are there boundary reviews? Are there new schools plans? Here's the enrollment picture. So that way we're utilizing that technology so we can direct them directly into what they want to know. Or if they're looking at a new home or something, again, they can use that same technology to help navigate. So that way it's a little bit easier to absorb that information, because frankly, if I'm living in, I'm a Hamiltonian, so if I'm in Binbrook, am I really going to be concerned about what's happening in Dundas? Probably not. So having to read the entire document to find my area of impact might be a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be an array of strategies, I'd say, on that front, but something we can look at, Jean.
Thank you very much.
Andrea, then Marco, and then Leah.
Thank you for the presentation, Fred. I really appreciate it. I always love to see the feedback. And I also want to say the sort of personalization or personal drilling down is fantastic. I would love to see that sort of vision come to fruition. But that's not about my question. My question is there are some concerns that are listed in here, and I think it's parents or community members are often looking for ways to interact with the board, and it may not be exactly the right place to put that feedback, but this is where it's going to be. Do we pass that information that is more operational? Like, for example, there's a comment there about the parking pattern and the traffic over at Hayden. Would that perhaps go over to the administration over at Hayden to deal with, or does it get kind of parked here and doesn't see the light of day over at Hayden?
That's a good question, Andrea. I'd say that it's the latter. It kind of, I'd say, dies probably in this format here. I'd certainly say, well, maybe I'll lessen the wording on that. It flags it for us, so as we're reviewing it, it's certainly something that pops up, especially if it's an issue or if it affirms some of the things that we're already working on. But certainly something that if we're seeing a major issue such as the Hayden, or we saw a couple of them that we're discussing kiss and ride issues or what have you, it could be something that we can forward on to the or I can work with my superintendents just to advise them and let them know that there's something happening. So that I'll take that back and see how we can better utilize some of that data as we move forward.
Really appreciate that. Thanks.
Go ahead, Marco.
Yeah, my question was similar, thanks Tracy, to Andrea's, because I'm looking at these lists here, and like quality of education is more along the lines of performance, I would assume. So yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Is there a way to segregate those or funnel those comments that are coming in that might not necessarily directly tie to LTAP related things and stem them to somebody who might make a difference in looking at them? So similar to Andrea. And the other thing, I also really like the idea of that whole what's the impact piece and moving forward. I think that would really sort of bolster the effectiveness of this document. And again, somewhat similar to what Jean was sort of suggesting, instead of having it that knock it out of the park once a year, doing it in smaller chunks might make it more digestible, because I know for me, this was a lot to read on one sitting. So, but I really appreciate all the work you did. So thanks, Fred.
Thank you, Margo.
Go ahead, Leah.
Hello. So I guess this is a question maybe for the secondary panel. How does municipal transportation improvements that are happening in municipalities inform the LTAP? And I know it's not there right now, but what I heard from some of this data was there was a concern about programming at schools. And so I'm talking about the secondary schools. And I'm wondering whether when we have certain secondary schools offering a certain program, do we see an uptake in participation when municipal transit has been improved or is potentially improving? And I asked this with sort of the thought of the iSTEM program and how in the past, we know some students had got to school from outside of the municipality using potentially the GO train or other municipal transit pieces. So I was just wondering, is that something that we should be looking at? Or is this, so that's just one of those things that have been sort of brewing in my mind, because I know what's happening in Burlington and certainly in other communities where there is, potential infrastructure changes to transportation. So how that would or could impact the numbers at schools with special programming.
I'll say that I don't think it's necessarily part of our consideration. Well, planning is related to and our limited involvement on the programming side of things for the implementation of municipal transit or things like that. I'd see it more as, with the availability and improvement in interconnectivity, that better transportation or public transportation provides, I think that certainly has, it opens up doors in terms of making things more accessible and then providing more options. It'd be very hard to determine, what that enrollment impact would be. So I think that's more something that we would have to monitor on an ongoing basis. But the easier it is to get to a location, the more it can become a viable option. So it's to answer your question, no, but and I'm not quite sure how we could operationalize that in the programming. But it is a flag, so that's something that you are right there, Liam.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. So I just have a question myself. Firstly, just a heads up, at the board meeting, I'm going to ask about that SRA 108 boundary review, just to understand is included in that, which schools are included. But I know we're talking about the public feedback tonight. So I wonder, I saw it in a couple of the comments, just questioning, I guess, the accuracy of the forecasts. And I wonder retrospectively whether you could say kind of how close these numbers usually are to what happens in the community in terms of growth, decline, that sort of thing.
I'd say in terms of our, if I were to look at the comments that we're discussing in terms of our accuracy of projections, for the most part, sometimes there's highs and lows, like where, our trends didn't necessarily materialize. But I think a lot of times too, it's linked more to why are there so many portables? Why didn't you plan for this? The school should be, or the schools aren't coming fast enough. I'd say it's less of a reflection of the enrollment projections. I think it's more of a, why is the school not there yet? But to your point too, Tracy, there are the ones that, that pointed out directly, like this school said we'd have this much enrollment and, we're 20 off. So I'd say generally speaking, when we look at our overall trends over the last 5 years, we've been, barring last year as the anomaly. I'm always going to say, 2020 is the off year. But I'd say we're always within a percent point of plus or minus in terms of accuracy for projection board wide. And the further you go out in the projection too, if you're looking at a 3, 4, 5 year, that just exacerbates a bad trend or a changing trend. So, if the trends remain stable over that time, our projections will remain accurate. But in high growth areas where we're constantly looking at updating development yields, I can see why the community can be frustrated where enrollment's either coming a lot faster or a lot slower. And a lot of times it's because we're using previous data to dictate future data. So it's a mixed bag, let's say. But I'd say generally speaking, we're pretty accurate overall when it comes to our projections.
Thank you. Okay, so seeing no other questions at this point, I just want to thank everybody for the presentation and look forward to the LTAP coming to the board meeting next week then.
And Trace will have more to discuss with regards to the North Oakville situation with SRA 108. So we'll have more information to provide on that.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Have a great night. And we will go to item 3.4 then. So we have a number of subcommittee updates. And the first one is governance review. And I believe, sorry, go ahead, Margot.
You missed 3.3.
Yes, I certainly did. So
Andrea's puppy came especially for it. I saw her walk in the room.
We'll do that one next then. Item 3.3 is chair and vice chair elections, giving notice. Over to you, Andrea.
Thank you. I had to, as you can see in the corner, may not a fuzzy dog. I have a 4-month-old puppy that keeps stealing shoes from my front, bringing them in as a gift. Okay. So chair and vice chair elections. Now, this isn't necessarily, I know it says giving notice, but that doesn't mean that tonight we're talking about actually giving your notice. We're more talking about what the process that you all would like in place for providing that notice. It was something that was brought up last year, and as you know, chair and vice chair elections are the first board meeting of December. So we still have a month and a half to go before the actual election. Usually Trustee Daniele would kindly put out an email sort of, hey, if you're interested, I would love to know. But we as a group had mentioned that it might be nice to have a more upfront process for that and not just rely on Donna doing that. But that's not to say that people can, of course, declare that they want to run for chair or vice chair right up until the election itself. So, and that seemed to be a clear statement last year when we had discussions that, we don't want to say that there's a off by whatever date beforehand, because you never know what inspires someone to become or to want to run for the positions. So I guess we're kind of just, or I'm kind of just here looking to see if how people would like this handled. If we want to have something more like, this committee of the whole in November that people could say if they wanted to, whether they would like to run or not. But again, leaving the door open for any other possible candidates. Also along that vein, this is just an aside, is that Tracy and I were talking about striking committee, which we usually do the first committee of the whole in December, and that sort of tie into the chair and vice chair possible declarations in the first committee meeting in November. People may also want to, at that meeting, say whether they are perhaps potentially stepping away from a committee that perhaps they've been on over the last years, just so people understand some areas that may be, even though all areas are vacant, there tends to be sort of an incumbent feel like of continuing work in some ways. And if people are stepping away or feel that their time on those committees might be up, they could also let people know at that particular meeting. Have I caught that right, Tracy, from our conversations went?
Yes, for sure. Thank you. It was just a thought that since there are both of these processes happening kind of side by side in November and December, that people may want to kind of state their intentions no matter what they are. So you can plan a little bit or give some thought. So we have Andrea, have you presented? Okay, so Margot, go ahead.
So thanks, Tracy and Andrea. I'm just wondering, so Andrea, I remember being part of that, I'll say subcommittee or group that talked about this all last year. And I think we went around and around the bush and came back to no definitive answer as to what people wanted to do. So I'm just wondering, and Tanya, you might be able to help jar my memory, because I remember fulsome discussions with many people about this and suggestions being put forward and being refuted. And I'm just trying to remember, do you remember where we landed?
We landed nowhere. Everyone had there was no consensus as to what we wanted the process to look like. We couldn't agree on a final product. So,
Because again, I think with this, I find it odd, and I know this is something we talked about before, this being one of the biggest decisions we make every year. Every other decision comes to the board twice except for this one. So it just, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense that there isn't that, and I know you can keep it open to the end, but that pre-planning ahead of time. So just my 2 cents.
Okay, so do you have?
No, so as I said, I remember because I was at my parents, and I remember sitting at the table and talking. I think Tanya and Amy and maybe Kelly. Was it the 4 of us that talked about this? I don't remember. Oh, Jean, I just don't. Was there? So I can't remember where we landed and why we didn't land somewhere that makes this discussion that little bit more fruitful.
There was some discussion that things could get awkward in the case. We have 11 amazing trustees sitting around our table. But what if one year there wasn't 11 amazing trustees sitting around the table, and we put into place something where people had to give notice? And let's say only one trustee gave notice, and that trustee was a rogue trustee. And so if we had a deadline in place that was the only person who put their name forward, that person would be chair. And I like to think that we would never be in that position, but I know that Donna can remember a time when there were trustees, and I can remember it too, because even though I was sitting in the gallery at the time, I can remember having a couple of trustees at the table that didn't always behave very well.
Okay, Jean?
Oh, I took my hand down because I see Donna's got her hand up, and then I can come in after. Thanks.
Okay, go ahead, Donna.
Thank you. And I'm going to tag on to Amy on this. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it is something that could be very, very, very easily manipulated. You are very fortunate in that you've had the opportunity to work with this board. Is amazing. Anybody asks me about the 10 trustees I work with this board, and even the last term, I consider myself to be working in utopia compared to some of the ones that I started with. And I would want you to think of some of the people that you have seen run in the last few elections, and had they possibly gotten in, how they could subvert this. I think we're trying to fix something that's not broken. And there are so many other things that are broken. I would rather see us spend our time on something that would actually have an impact. And I think what we're going to do is mess up the good in the search for the perfect. And so this isn't something I see as necessary. This isn't something I see as a positive step forward. This is something that I think could be fraught with danger in the wrong hands. And I feel very, very strongly that it's not the way to go.
Okay, you mean having a deadline for nominations, or making any kind of public declaration of wanting to run?
I think if somebody wanted to run at the last trustee questions and comments before the meeting, there's nothing stopping them from saying, I'm looking forward to the election. And by the way, I hope that I have your vote. Because quite frankly, if you can't step forward and say it without some process or a policy that says you have to do it, then maybe you are not the best person for it. You should be able to step forward, say, I'm running for this. If you'd like to talk to me, I'd love to tell you why I think I'm the best person, instead of micromanaging it down into something that I think will dilute.
Tanya?
What happened to Jean?
Sorry, Jean and then Tanya.
She didn't put her hand back up again.
Nope, then Tanya.
Okay, so I have a question. So I understand what Donna's saying, that you want to give people the opportunity to submit their name up to and including the day of the election. So can someone remind me what the process is if no one puts up their hand to be the chair or vice chair. I don't know what the process is, so I just need someone to tell me what happens.
Amy, go ahead. Amy? We can't hear you.
I swear I turned off my mute, but it didn't work. Anyway, we have no process for the instance where nobody put their name forward, but I can imagine we would continue going around the table because Curtis wouldn't want to be chairing the meeting. He'd be saying, wait a minute here, come on guys, put your name in, somebody, come on.
Okay, and so Donna, go ahead.
And thank you. And just to let you know that we did make a change years ago to make it better. It used to be that you could only announce on the day of, and you had to have someone nominate you and you had to have someone second you. So there was a lot of scurrying around behind doors and power plays. And I remember trustees coming to me and saying, if you'll vote for me for chair, we'll make sure you're OPSPA director and things like that. So that's the kind of stuff that ends up happening when it's that prescribed. Because of that, we went to the method that we have now where the director pulls names out of a hat and asks people if they want to run or not. So I'm looking at it from a perspective of where it was really, really bad for morale, bad for team, and easily manipulated into something that I've seen work exceptionally well. So if you're wondering why I'm so passionate, that's why. I've seen it really, really bad, and we have it really, really good, and I'm scared to make any changes that would make it less good. And yes, I'm an English major, and I said yes, good, less good. So.
Okay, Tanya.
Well, thank you for making the process simpler, because the process as it is today isn't so bad. But I'm also hearing conflicting information. I'm hearing that you don't want someone to go rogue and put in their nomination someone who we possibly, not any of us obviously, but someone you don't want to be chair put up their name. But at the same time, I'm also hearing that if there is no name, poor Curtis is going to go around the table until someone submits their name. So if we're trying to avoid a rogue process, shouldn't we also be avoiding the possibility of no chair?
In 5 years of covering it as a reporter and 16 years on this board, I've never seen that happen, and I've never seen it happen at any of the other 31 publicly funded school boards.
Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I'd like just to say, let's take a look at the process and add in something in writing about what happens if there's nobody running, because it could happen. I can't imagine that it happening in Halton, but it could happen. And so let's put something into the process. There's nothing wrong with having a process.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so we'll take a look at that. Is there sort of a consensus then that we'll leave the process as is? And if people, we can make room on the committee of the whole meeting in November in case any people would like to declare during that meeting? Or Tanya, go ahead.
I like your suggestion of putting room in the November committee of the whole meeting for anyone who's interested, but also having heard what everyone's saying, I don't want that to preclude anyone from not announcing in December. So I like your suggestion.
Okay, good. Everybody else pretty good with that? Just a nod of the head or thumbs up. I see some positive vibes. Okay, good. And then with excellent. And then with the striking committee, also having some time there to let people know if they are, perhaps could be used as giving some information about the committee, because not everybody has been on on a committee, but if, looking to kind of step away from a committee, saying, this is what the committee is actually about, as a kind of a summary might be an interesting thing. Margot, go right ahead.
Hi, so thank you. I just seem to recall the striking committees before we had difficulty in people. I don't know, we used to number them, right? So, and then not going for them because somebody else really wants that. And so that's the piece I always worry about, because I do see that, my position, your position, whose ever position. And I don't know how to combat that, because I don't know that you can, but I know we've done it the two ways. You did it the numbered, and then you just put your choice, you did the ticks. So
Donna, go ahead.
I feel like that movie character, that grizzled old veteran that's in the corner going, yeah, but back in the day. I like the ticks versus the numbers. And I can tell you again, this was where we had a really, really bad system. It was all in the hands of the chair, the vice chair, and the director. So everybody put in their choices in December. And then when you got the board package in January, you read the report to see where you were. You had no idea how any of that was going. So once it was moved to this, it's a huge, huge improvement. And again, I don't want to see us throw out the good in pursuit of the perfect, because again, I know there was a lot of phone calls and backroom deals and wheelings and dealings, and it was ugly. I don't look back on my first term with a lot of fond memories because of that. And I'm so incredibly grateful we have what we do, and I want to make sure we keep what we do. So I prefer the ticks to the numbering, and I think the discussion is actually huge, especially when I have 10 colleagues I respect now, and that hasn't always been true. So that conversation is always such a welcome one to me, and a very, very big improvement on what we had. Okay, I'm going to go back to my grizzled old corner now.
Okay, and Heather?
Oh, we have great colleagues, don't we? I think our goal should always try to be as transparent as possible. And I think this group shines on that. And I hope we continue with that through the rest of our term and forward if anybody's going to put their hand up and run again. But I think transparency is it. So don't hide behind anything. Just put your hand up and say, yeah, I want to do that, or no, I don't. And I think, I think we all respect one another enough to get the jobs done. That's it.
Okay. Is there any appetite, perhaps, instead of for the striking committee part, to have people? I can at least send out last year's list of committees. I don't know how many of them are changing, but last year's committees, we know people are on them. And if people have any questions about those actual committees and how they function, how they meet, that sort of thing, members that are currently on that committee may be able to answer those questions, so that people have are making informed decisions when we go to the striking committee process. Is there any appetite for that? I see a thumbs up from Donna. And Tanya, do you have something to say?
So yeah, there is appetite for me. The only request I would make is if perhaps Curtis and the SO team can just review those committees to make sure that they are planned to continue next year. And I say this from a place where I thought I was on the committee, and oops, no meetings. So and I could have put my efforts elsewhere. So I just want to make sure that whatever committees are on that list are in fact going to continue on in 2022 2022. I'm mixed up with my years today. So just to ensure that they are going to continue on in 2022 and that the time commitment is accurate. You know, if it's monthly meetings, twice a year, whatever. I just wanted to make sure that whatever we're signing up for is accurate.
Okay, and I saw Curtis text that will do. So great support there to make that happen. Anybody else have any comments before we move on to the next topic? Okay, so just as a recap, we are for declarations for running for chair, vice chair, that we're leaving space the next committee of the whole meeting. So if people want to, they can use that space to do that. However, there is no mandate or deadline to do that. And also at that committee of the whole meeting, we're hoping to have a potentially a listing of committees that are moving forward in 2022, and we'll leave a little space for people to ask questions of current or recent members of that committee on how that committee actually functions, so people can make an informed choice when we do come to striking committee. Tanya, go ahead.
So many questions today. So where did we leave off as far as possibly looking at a process if no one does put their name in for chair?
That's right. I forgot to mention that. So who would like to take that on? Is there any interest? Amy? Go ahead.
Oh, I wrote the current process, so I think I could tinker with it, and I'll ask some of my buddies on the governance committee to help me out there. But I don't think it'd take much. It's just add a few lines in there.
Okay. Do you want to bring that back maybe to the next committee of the whole? Do you think?
I probably could.
Okay. So we'll add that to our list of actions then. Thank you very much. And I believe I'm passing the mic back to Vice Chair Harrison.
Thank you. And so I made a note of that in the agenda tracker sheet for next meeting. So I'll reach out to everybody just to make sure that's still on track. If not, we can move it. And I think that's how this topic got onto this agenda. Is many months ago we had this conversation, and as Margot pointed out, we didn't necessarily come to any kind of conclusion, so we bumped it forward to now, knowing that November and December we'd be into those processes. So it's great that we addressed it and we can keep moving forward then. So item 3.4 are subcommittee updates, and 3.4.1 is governance review. And I'm just going to kind of refresh everybody's memory a little bit on this. The committee involved Heather, Margot, Donna, and Jean, and myself, I believe, although that is a rather large subcommittee. So we started this process in 2018 where we developed the survey and the questions were derived from both OESC and from OPSPA related documents. And we were wanting to see how we are doing introspectively, working together with respect to our mandate as trustees for this school board. And so all trustees participated in the survey in 2018 and 2019. In 2019, of course, we had a baseline that we could compare to from 2018. In 2020, the group, which was slightly smaller at that point, I believe, we decided that since we were in the thick of the pandemic at that point in time, that we would recommend to the broader group that we carry forward with the goals that came out of the 2019 process, since we hadn't yet achieved them all. So in the folder for this meeting, you would have found both those historic goals, as well as there's a survey in there, because what's happened in the interim was that there's been some rather public reviews of different boards and how they're doing their governance reviews. And we looked at compared it to what we were doing in efforts to continuously kind of evolve our process. And the two things that we weren't doing were one, interviews with fellow trustees to kind of supplement that survey work. And number two was to invite a neutral observer to a meeting or two to provide some observations to us. So as a subcommittee, we have not discussed that. So I'm kind of putting those two ideas out there. And we do have a survey that we created back in April, but it was not implemented. So I think this is a heads up that we can put the survey out and see what your thoughts are around the value of that governance review and around those two other things. I'm not suggesting or not advocating for either or both of those, but would love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead, Andrea, then Tanya.
Yeah, just a note about the link to the survey. That is the editable version that's there. So if you want to actually fill out the survey, you need to, click the eyeball up in the top right corner, and that actually will allow you to fill it out as a survey. Because everybody, or at least I, have editing access to it. Yes.
Okay, well, I can also change that to the eyeball one when I send out the link.
Mm-hmm.
In advance, is there any other discussion on that? So the subcommittee, we can we'll send out the survey, then we can kind of discern what the responses are and come back to the group with some suggestions, I guess. Does that work for both the group and for the subcommittee? Go ahead, Leah.
Nope, I was just giving my A-OK there.
Okay.
Because I think it's a good thing. Yeah.
Okay, super. Alrighty, so now we'll move on to 3.4.2, DPR, Director's Performance Review. And we had, at one time, that was a vice chair role. And last year, we piloted that as one of the striking committee roles. And Andrea, I believe, led. Did you have a partner last year? Was it Margot? Yes? Okay.
Margot's helping me this year for certain.
Okay, gotcha. So over to you two then.
Okay. Well, as you can see in the folder, there are a number of items that are related to DPR. And tonight, of course, we're not doing DPR. We're just talking about the process of DPR. And in that folder, it includes, of course, the policy, the governance procedure, as well as what the Director's Performance Review is related, of course, to the operational leadership policy and governance procedure. In there as well are previous goals, for the past 2 years, just because last year was kind of an anomaly year in that there are a number of goals having to do with Stuart leaving and transitioning. And of course, that's not something we have to worry about this year. Curtis, of course, much of his this process will be focused on developing goals because we don't have any moving forward specifically tied to Curtis. So there is in there a potential timeline as well as the sheet, I wanted to say Excel, sorry, the Google sheet. And you can see in there that there are, we're establishing a timeline, establishing criteria, which of course is done with, in conjunction with the director, self-evaluation process, feedback and assessment, ratings, goal development. And again, that will be the big part of this, will be the goal development. And then, of course, we have to create a report on outcomes and list the goals that are listed on our website for the meeting, the first meeting in December. So what we need to do is actually establish the committee itself at this meeting. And of course, Margot and I are co-chairing this. And we need at least 4 trustees to also be part of this committee. Custom is that everyone has been involved with the committee, but there is no rule to say that you have to be part of the committee, though we do need, and it's surprising, we do need 6 altogether according to our governance procedure. So, Margot, do you want to field the questions that are coming up?
Sure, I will. Let's take a look at the order. All right, Amy, you're first.
I volunteer.
Okay, Jean?
I volunteer.
Heather?
I'd like to volunteer too.
Tracy? Jean, your hand is still up. Okay, Tracy.
Same.
Leah?
Yep, same.
We did find it quite not funny, but because when Andrea and I were talking about this, we know that usually everybody is involved. And as she said, although you don't have to be, in the past, it really has been a whole board effort.
And I think that's in there just as a point. I think that we put that in there thinking that this board could grow, significantly. If we were if we were the Toronto District School Board, there are so many trustees, it would be unwieldy to have a whole trustee committee like that. So this just gives us an out.
All right, Jean, you're back up.
Yes, thank you. I just wonder, there are times when we strike committees where we put a proviso in effect that there be representation from each of the 4 regions. When do we apply that and when do we not? And is this a case where we should?
It's a good question. We often do that when we deal with things that are, like I'm trying to think, we had the Return to School Committee, we did that. Things where the perspective of the different municipalities is of utmost importance because there may be significant differences. I'm not sure if that's the case when you come to director's performance review. Maybe that is something we could talk about in a future iteration of this particular policy or governance procedure.
Donna?
First of all, director's performance reviews. You don't talk about director's performance review. No, sorry. I was just putting my hand up to volunteer.
I thought thought you already had. Thank you. Amy.
Yeah, further to Jean's observation there and question, I think that merits actually some time on a future committee of the whole, because it would be good to have some rules of the road for when we're looking for geographic representation and when it's seen as unnecessary to do so, just so that we know going forward how we want to approach that.
Yeah, just as we, whether things have come or is now official to go to a board meeting twice or arrives one time, we've established criteria for that. So I think that establishing criteria for committee selection, geographically or not, sounds like a great idea. Okay, so I have Amy, Jean, Heather, Tracy, Leah, and Donna. Okay, and I know that Kelly sent her regrets today, so I will reach out to her just in case to see if she is also interested. But thank you very much, and Margot and I will connect with committee members, and if I'm missing people or you've reconsidered, either way, just let me know, and we'll work with that. So, as I said, Margot and I will contact the committee going forward.
Thank you. So just so things don't get lost, there was an action item that we talked about just now regarding the criteria for committees. And I wonder whether, Amy, did you put up your hand for that, or was that the last thing? Sorry, I can't.
You've put me on the spot. Didn't quite hear what you said. Your audio is actually a bit tinny right now.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'll put it in my headphones after we take a break.
Tracy, on the chart that Andrea has created, it says the establishment of criteria starting to thinking about it today, but it says end on the 19th, which is a week from today.
Yeah. But I think that we're talking about the actual broader committee participation, like other committees.
Yes. So I just wonder whether the group feels that there are any existing committees, subcommittees out there that are working that would have this under their purview already, or whether it's a new piece of work to be assigned.
Can you refresh my memory? What is the topic? Okay, that's the part that I missed.
Okay, so Jean raised the question about geographic representation.
Okay.
And that led to the question more broadly of what criteria are used to assign trustees to different committees. So when do we need geographic representation? When do we not? That kind of discussion. I'm imagining it would be kind of 2 sentences when they are and not kind of thing.
It might go a bit bigger than that, though, because we might want to discuss general criteria for committee membership. We do have some in the policy and governance procedure. So it might be a little bit bigger than just looking at when do we want to include geographic representation as a criteria, because I think it's already in the list. It's just perhaps needs a little bit more definition, but we may then look at it and say other things also need more definition.
So the question is, who? Who's going to do it?
Well, I think the governance committee should be doing it.
Okay.
And so, just a comment that these are more having. It's interesting because when the directors come to me in the past for an ad hoc committee for whatever reason, in them forming the committee, they have specifically for regional representation. Like when the return to school came up, it wasn't a committee that we had, but it was a request from the director that the representation happen. So I think that we could leave space, and this is, I guess, a message to the governance committee we could leave space for that direction to be part of a committee, a forming of a committee, or it could also, that direction could also come from the director himself or themselves when they are asking for representation for a committee.
Okay, Jean.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to make a notation moving forward on this topic to refer to it as regional representation instead of geographic, because Milton and Halton Hills is often referred to the north. And I think it's important to keep a separation. So if we could refer to it as regional, I think it's more appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so then it looks like we're asking the governance committee, who is speaking a couple items hence, to take on another piece of work. So maybe we can take let's take a 5-minute break and come back at 7:40. And Tanya and Amy and whoever's reporting there, maybe you can give it some thought and just confirm whether you think that's a good fit and whether it's possible. Just again, so we don't lose it. Okay, so 7:35, I'll see everybody back at 7:40. Hi, welcome back. Okay, so we will move on to item 3.4.3, Reimagine Forward. And that committee has on it Leah, Andrea, Margot, Joanna, and myself. And so I wonder whether one of the committee members would like to give just a brief update. Anybody?
Excuse me?
Yes?
What was the question? I just sat back down.
No, it's just relaxing time. The Reimagine Forward Committee is going to just give a brief update.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Andrea, and then others can pitch in.
Okay. So we have had, this committee has been going on for quite a while. And we had an opportunity to meet with Superintendent Padra Barrick around sort of moving forward, getting the message out. And we have, I believe, been able to convey our needs, and he has left, well, not left, but he is consulting with the communications team and along potentially with the shift team to come up with sort of a next steps for getting this declaration, for implementing this declaration, for announcing this declaration to our community, because what we really want is for it to be brought into the, well, what we want is kind of an understanding of a place where people can go and share their ideas. That's kind of what came out of the last meeting, was the talk of a potential repository of ideas and the potential that these ideas could be shared with actual curriculum, like parts of the curriculum, so that, so it gives the opportunity for teaching staff to find other ways potentially to try new things, to try to meet those curriculum expectations. Anybody else want to jump? Sorry, my dog has a squeaky toy. So I'll let someone else talk, so you don't have to listen to that.
Sounds like a duck has invaded your space over there.
Yes, it's a pig that sounds like a duck. Yes.
Okay. There you go. Okay. Anybody else from the subcommittee?
I can just add quickly. So I think that as with any good discussion that's fruitful and moving forward, we're kind of ebbing and flowing with taking one step back and then a couple steps forward, just to make, I think that it's a long journey, but I think that we're revisiting as we go along. And I think every time we meet, we become clear and more solidified in our passion to move forward. So I thought the last meeting that we had was lots of light bulbs seemed to go off on the last meeting. We actually saw the light bulbs. So it's kind of a nice feeling to see when you feel that success coming forward. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. David, did you have something on this one?
I haven't even put my hand up yet, Tracy. You are very good. I did have a question. I'm just curious about this repository. I thought the declaration piece was around change and where is education headed in the next number of years, and I thought the reach out was to gather ideas from the community around what that would look like. I guess this is a real surprise to me around a repository for curriculum resources and things like that. We've gone down that route before a couple different times, I would say, and there's there are some concerns and issues around quality and vetting and copyright and workload. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. I wasn't on this. I wasn't on the same page in terms of understanding where things were going. So I guess I'm looking for maybe a little bit more information. I haven't been part of those conversations, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around what that could look like. I was thinking this was something quite different.
Mm-hmm. And, it was, and I think as Andrea and Margot said, there's an evolution piece happening. And so Joanna has her hands up, and then I would just suggest that David and Scott kind of connect to share the information that's been flowing, and also connect with the subcommittee about steps forward or concerns. Go ahead, Joanna.
Yeah, thanks. So, as as the committee was imagining and reimagining how education could evolve with everything changing and new technology and new approaches to learning and teaching and careers and pathway development, we know that there's a great number of teachers out there who are very creative and innovative in the way that they teach various parts of the curriculum. And it's really kind of getting the ideas from them and having them share with us. And the repository is really a database that would allow an individual to share their approach, share a creative spin or innovative spin they took on a particular component of a curriculum, and sharing that with the rest of the Halton District School Board, so that others can, check it out and maybe try and apply it in their own classroom. So we're talking about kind of a searchable database where people could access that information. And we did talk about also kind of, at some point maybe reaching out to the community stakeholders, because I think it is worthwhile to hear from what the colleges and universities have to say, what other agencies and even workplaces, how they can provide some guidance to our students and staff around the evolution of education within our schools. So that's really what we're kind of brainstorming and talking about. And the declaration was really a commitment from the Board of Trustees to create a culture and an environment at HDSB that will be supportive of staff sharing innovative and creative approaches, having access to that information, and continuing to grow themselves as well. So I hope I captured that, and please anybody chime in. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So that was a snapshot in time update from the committee. Thank you very much. And at this point, I understand we're not waiting for, but the next step is a loop back from Scott and the team just about what's possible. And we'll keep the rest of the trustees up to date at our monthly meetings. So thanks very much, everyone. If we go on then to 3.4.4, we have the professional development update group. Go ahead.
Hello. Yes, we had our first meeting of this school year today, and I put a brief summary of what we're planning into the Drive folder. So if you've had a chance to look at that and you have any questions, please let me know. We are hoping to have the communications PD mid to late November, depending on the availability of the facilitator. And the rest of it is up to how things go when we fill out the survey that will be coming your way in a couple of days. Oh, and I've also reached out to Director Innes, and he has graciously offered to meet with a couple of us on the committee to discuss possibilities of working with senior staff on some of the PD projects, as well as some team building.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Amy, I have one. Just with respect to point number 1, the communications PD, can you say generally what at a high level that will entail?
It's going to be a little bit around those difficult conversations that we sometimes need to have. It's also going to be about the different types of communication streams that we find ourselves in. We talk to parents, we talk to teachers, we talk to principals, we talk to senior admin, and there's a difference in the audience of who we're speaking with, and a different approach to be taken with each of those. And there were some other nuances to that. Donna, can you remember?
I'm just trying to find them because we are looking at the that had heard. The areas that we talked to her about that we haven't narrowed down to are how to have difficult conversations with parents, given that the Ed Act prohibits trustees from interfering in day-to-day operations, but we do receive calls and emails. 2 is how to bring forward a minority opinion on a topic, because it can be difficult to bring forward an opinion that differs from the majority of trustees of the board. And 3, how to communicate with each other, knowing we each come to the board table with diverse life experiences and areas of expertise, how to acknowledge and appreciate the skill sets and talents of each of the trustees on the table. That was our starting point. A lot of other emails under that, but that was our starting point.
Okay, thank you. So when
Does that fit your expectations?
Oh, definitely. And I have an additional thing that I will be putting into the survey, which is just around media communications, because I understand that the chair is the spokesperson. However, there do come opportunities or times when the local trustee may be interviewed by members of the media, and you know, I find that to be a special skill as well that I would love to kind of hone, just in terms of being specific and all of that. So maybe it fits with what's happening this year, and maybe not, but I'll put that forward and see where we land.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions and comments for this group? Okay, we will go then to the 3.4.5, which is the governance bylaw committee. And thank you very much for the PD update. Go ahead, governance people.
Okay, so the Governance Standing Committee. In the Google Drive, there is a 2-page report, and I broke it out into 3 parts: what we've done, what we're doing, where we're headed. So a brief recap of what we've done so far this year is we created a governance standing committee, which has been busy at work. And as a result of that, we also had to obviously update some of our policies and procedures to accommodate that new committee. One of the policies that we worked on this year was a subcommittee for what was known as the board recognition policy, which is now the Inspire Awards policy. That subcommittee did great work insofar as we have a new policy, we have a new procedure, and we have an updated website that is more user-friendly. So special thanks to Tracy and Margot, who got that going. And am I missing anyone from that subcommittee?
I think Leah helped as well a little bit.
Oh,
Am I right?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Leah. If I've missed you, it's unintentionally. We've just done so much, I can't keep track of everything. And I wanted to keep the report concise. Most recently, we've put a motion forward to change our bylaws with respect to scheduling meetings. So look for that. I'm looking forward to your yay vote at next week's board meeting, and that'll be another checkbox done. But I think what's the most impactful that's come out of this governance committee is that over the year, actually less than a year, because I think we really got cracking in March, is that with the help of the senior team and Gail, and I say we, I don't mean we as trustees. Well, yes, I do. We as trustees and the senior team and everyone involved in policy, we have updated 13 policies. We've rescinded 4. We've identified 2 as having a ministry moratorium. And as it stands right now, only 2 policies are overdue. And we've also created a policy review schedule. So if you take a look at it, it is also in the drive. We can easily identify which policies and procedures are coming up for review. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who has done so much work over the last, I don't know how many months to get us to this place. We are headed in the right direction. So thank you. Merci. And that brings us to, well, what are we doing right now? So right now we have, we have the motion that hopefully will get approved next week. We also have a subcommittee that is being led by Leah and Joanna with respect to the student trustee policy. It's currently written as a combination policy procedure, but it will be broken out into 2 pieces to comply with our policy and procedure framework. So we hope that committee hopes to present something by the end of the year. And it looks like we're also going to look at revisiting chair and vice chair. What happens when no one puts their name forward? So that's on our plate right now. And what's coming up next? This is really a smorgasbord of all the different things that we've identified so far that need to happen. Some have dates attached to them, others do not. So we do have 2 policies and 2 procedures that are actually due in the next 2 months. So perhaps if I haven't told the other members of the governance standing committee, but perhaps we can put a motion tonight to create a subcommittee to review those 2 policies and procedures. And that is the operational leadership policy and the Director of Education annual performance review policy. So I'll leave you to think about that for a little bit. We're also looking at reviewing and hopefully updating some procedures. The 3 procedures that we've identified are the Audit Committee Governance Procedure, the Director's Performance Review Procedure, and the Operational Leadership Governance Procedure. Some of these will probably be really quick exercises. Others might take a little bit longer. We've also identified through, I guess, speaking at different board meetings at that committee of the whole, that we need to look at our bylaws, because the last time they were reviewed was probably over 3 years ago. So we're going to look at creating a subcommittee to review the bylaws. If there are anything anything, if there's anything in it that you would like us to pay attention to, then obviously you can always join the subcommittee that gets created, or you can send one of us your thoughts. We're also looking, when I say looking, I mean future. We're going to look at updating the HDSB website insofar as how policies and governance procedures are displayed. And most recently, at the last Committee of the Whole, 4 more items were identified that probably belong to the Governance Standing Committee. We haven't yet had a chance to review the items that were delegated to us. So next steps for us is really to meet as a standing committee and figure out what our next steps are. Identify which items are high priority, which ones can wait till the new year, and which ones perhaps could be pushed out further. And just at tonight's Committee of the Whole, something else landed on our plate, and that's about regional representation on committees. So I have a few thoughts on that, but I'm not sure if I should share them now or if I should share them with the Governance Standing Committee first. I'm going to open the floor now if anyone has any questions to ask, or if anyone wants to start volunteering for some of the items that need to be updated. Andrea, go ahead.
Well, I would certainly volunteer for the DPR related policy and governance procedure, but I was wondering if you might want to make a Google form with all these things, and who wants to volunteer for these committees, because there's a lot. We can certainly hope to share out the work that needs to be done here. I suspect some of them will just take a once over and not see a lot of change. Potentially like the operational leadership policy, things like that may not require much change. But I would also suggest that both the DPR ones and the operational leadership ones wait until this cycle of DPR is finished, because there may be feedback that comes out of the process that's happening right now.
So question to you, Andrea, when do you foresee the current DPR process
wrapping up? We have to present the report the first board meeting in December. So probably after that point.
Okay. Thank you. I can't see if anyone else has a question. No one?
No, I'm watching for you, Tanya. No one.
Okay. Okay, so Andrea does bring up a good point about creating a Google form, and there's a lot of work that needs to get done. Our intention is really, my intention tomorrow is to send out a doodle to the members of the Governance Standing Committee so that we can sit down and discuss which ones are high priority and address those first. So I think we need to prioritize what's on here and also determine what actually falls within our mandate under the Governance Standing Committee versus what doesn't. So this was more of a, it's like spaghetti. You're throwing it at the wall, see what sticks. So there's a lot of spaghetti on this wall right now. And we're going to try to go through all the items and determine what we're going to focus on and what we're not. Leah?
Yes. Can I ask you, what do you consider a review? And I want to understand why audit governance procedure was put on this list when audit had reviewed this procedure last year. We updated it. It came to board with respect to the, you'll notice that the, what was the piece that we added? Getting public participation involved. So we've updated it and it did come to board. So was that not considered our review? Like our board looked at it as well as audit committee. Could you define why we need to review it again?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Leah. And this is one item that could probably get completed in maybe less than an hour. The reason why it's on here is that if you were to click on the link in the report, you will notice that it's not in the format that is similar to all of our other governance procedures. It doesn't have the logo, it doesn't have the little table at the top. The date that it was reviewed isn't listed on there. So there's just, I guess, some housekeeping items that needs addressing. Perhaps this is one of those items that we can ask Gail to look at, and nothing else needs to be done. So it's on here because someone needs to do something with it, but not necessarily it needs to be reviewed for accuracy or information.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, because I would think that my impression, because we reviewed it at audit committee and then it came to board, that the only elements would be formatting. Absolutely, I think that is an easy one.
Andrea?
Maybe Gail wants to speak first.
Thank you. I just wanted to offer my assistance, and Leah and Tanya have already got that covered. So Leah and I can work together and make those changes happen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gail. Are you okay with being voluntold, Leah?
Sure can. No problem. Happy to help.
I'm talking and nobody's listening because my mic is on.
Andrea, and sorry, and also Amy has her mic off. I don't know if that means she wants to talk. No? Okay.
No, okay. The other thing I wanted to share with you is that
Andrea had her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Andrea.
So this is about the website stuff that you mentioned. I would love to be part of that committee. It'll be an interesting committee because it may take resources to kind of, depending on what, and to understand what the possibilities are.
Thank you for volunteering. I'm writing everyone's name on my sign-up sheet the old-fashioned way. Thank you. Okay, so the other, I think it's good news that I wanted to share with you is that over the last year, as new policies and procedures need to be approved by the trustees, the information is shared at the board table. And sometimes there's a lot of discussion that we want to have. And sometimes maybe the board meeting isn't the right setting. It's okay for approving it or not approving, but to get to the nitty gritty and ask a lot of questions, we thought perhaps, I say we, but it wasn't me. It's not my idea. One of the trustees suggested that perhaps we could have policies and procedures brought up at committee of the whole meetings first for discussion. A conversation has been had with Curtis, and he agrees. So going forward, board policies and governance procedures will be presented at the committee of the whole first for discussion, and then it will make its way to the board table for approval. The one question I have is, I'm not sure if it applies to administrative procedures, so I will let someone else answer that question. Maybe Amy or Tracy?
So maybe I can just say that the conversation talked about procedures and governance. The conversation talked about policies. Governance procedures are the purview of trustees anyway, so the chances are they would land at committee. We did not talk about administrative procedures, so that could be a future conversation or consideration.
Okay, thanks for clarifying, Tracy. Go ahead, Amy.
With respect to the administrative procedures, we don't get to approve those. It's operational. However, having the conversation about them could be in a more relaxed forum at Committee of the Whole. And quite often we have very meaty agendas at board. It would be nice to be able to get through those little conversations about why a procedure is the way it is at Committee of the Whole, where we can be a little bit less formal and get to the point of the question without needing to worry about all the formalities that are associated with that, and without making our board meetings go 20 minutes or half an hour longer than they need to. I would prefer to see those conversations happen in an informal setting.
So Tracy, is that something that you can talk to Curtis about?
And Curtis is here as well. So,
I didn't want to put Curtis on the spot.
No, yes, he's hearing the question right now and can give it some consideration along with Gail, and certainly we can follow up and report back on that.
So may I? So the conversation that we've been having so far is strictly around policies. We did not address administrative procedures, and as such, we would have to take that back and report back again.
Yes, I hope I characterized that well, Curtis. Yeah, okay. Even though I goofed up and said procedure the first time around, I really meant policy.
Okay, so thank you, Tracy and Curtis. The one item I'm looking for clarification as I add another item to this report is the discussion that came up like 2 or 3 bullet points before, and that had to do with regional representation at committees. I'm just looking for clarification. Are we looking for the governance committee to look at regional representation at striking committees, or as committees pop up during the year? Or are we looking to determine what criteria would warrant regional representation?
I see it as a catch-all, really. There are some that come from our striking committees every year. That in the past, we had a French advisory committee, and there was regional representation on that. There was regional representation on PIC. We've had committees that have been ad hoc committees. We've had committees that have been subcommittees where it made sense to have regional representation. Quite often when the director is hiring superintendents, we've had regional representation of trustees as flies on the wall for those committees. We don't hold sway in that committee, but in the past we have had some regional representation on those committees. So I would think that what we need to be looking at, and I do believe that the procedure right now, or the policy, I can't remember which, does specify a list of things that we seek when we're looking to who goes on a committee. So we should probably look at that whole basket full of criteria and determine if there needs to be more definition around them.
Okay, thank you, Amy. The only thing I'm a bit weary of is when we go down that path of regional representation versus geographical, is that we have one region that only has one trustee, and I don't think it's fair if that one trustee is asked to participate in every committee, because that is a huge time commitment for that one trustee. So I'm just weary of overburdening that trustee. So I think it's something that we need to consider, regional versus geographical, and perhaps some committees do warrant a regional approach and some committees warrant a geographical approach. So I just want to put that out there as possibly one not being exclusive of the other. So, okay, so my report is over. Jean, I see giving thumbs up, and she's the trustee that I'm worried about. So thank you for giving me your thumbs up. So as far as the next steps for the Governance Standing Committee is I am going to send out a doodle to my fellow committee members. And as a refresher, those are Amy, Margot, and Tracy. So we can meet and discuss what we're gonna take on next, what subcommittees we need to create. And after that, you will start seeing some emails come your way to sign on, help us out, and we can keep working on our policies, procedures, and bylaws and everything else that falls under us. So if there's no other question, thank you, and on to the next.
Okay, seeing no other questions. Andrea, you look like you want to say something though, so nope, not at this moment. All right, so we will go on. Thank you very much. It's a lot of things are definitely moving forward and have been accomplished. Okay, so item 3.5, other business. And I have one item. I just wanted to ask Curtis to come on here. I understand that there was a question and possible conversation related to trustees meeting in the boardroom. And I just wondered whether you could give us some insight on that.
Thanks, Tracy. So many of you know that on a weekly basis, we meet with our public health officials and Dr. McGoni and others. And as a part of that conversation today, I know that Terry Blackwell, our superintendent, who has the portfolio, reported back to me that there was concern about meetings in the boardroom, and on a number of levels. One, meetings with the board meeting, that there are a few of us in the boardroom, but that if there is a meeting in a boardroom space, that we should be masked if we're in the space. And there was also concern that students, such as our student trustees, were also there. as you know, students, when they are at school and indoors outside of their mask breaks, they are masked while they're in session. And it also raised the question about our own internal meetings around our exec meetings or AC meetings that we also have. I think it's something that we're going to have to reflect on. I think there's a lot of confusion in the public around this particular, what's acceptable. We know that as we speak, there's probably 20,000 people down at Scotiabank Arena, screaming in each other's faces, and rubbing shoulders, literally. And so, the question really is, we know that there are different standards for different venues and different types of activities. We know that to be a fact. But in terms of meetings, the recommendation really is where we can continue to do so remotely and online. That is the recommendation, that we continue to meet remotely where possible. So I think there is some latitude to meet with face coverings and distancing and all of the other protocols. So I think it needs some discussion point. I know that this committee, for example, decided some time ago that this was going to be remote, but we had a hybrid model going for board meeting, and that is now in question.
Thank you. There are a couple questions here, Andrea and then Margot.
So we have always said we are not the experts. Public health is the experts. And so I would suggest that until we get the true go-ahead from public health, that we should probably go remotely even for our board meetings. We do have that ability to do so until, I believe, November 2022. Not that I want to do that until then, but legally we can. And from a transparency perspective, and the fact that we can't have people in our public gallery anyways, like there's no advantage in having the meeting at the board office so that public can see us, because public can't be there. They would only be able to access the meeting through online means anyways. And as if we were to continue in the boardroom masked and operating in that fashion, what we do in our meetings is talk. And so if I have a mask on all the time when I'm trying to make a point, you can see that there's not a true transparency in facial expression, etc., that goes along with a lot of the points that we make. And I think that actually is detrimental to transparency and potentially accountability. So, I mean, I will do whatever the board, the rest of the table wants me to do as chair. It's certainly not a distance for me to go to the board office. I live 3 kilometers from the board office. But I do think that from a public health recommendation, we should be following public health. So I don't know what other people think, but that's what I have to say.
Okay, let's hear from Margot and then Joanne.
Thank you. So I thought that public health had okayed the setup in the boardroom with their stickers. And I think, again, I don't know, that to me is the difference, because we are like in a classroom of students. So I know you can't be apart, but whereas in the boardroom we are apart. But I don't know, I could be wrong, but I I was under the impression that last spring or whenever it was that those stickers went up, that was on the guidance of public health.
Okay. Do you want Curtis?
I don't know if you wanted a response. I mean, I wasn't here last spring, but I certainly would agree with that, Margot, that sounds reasonable to me, that was something that was done.
Yeah, because I can't see us, sorry, Curtis, I can't see us going in there if we were told, like, I don't know. I just think that this, we are following the guidance. Oh, David, you were there last year. You'll know the answer, I would think.
Yep, Margot, I don't quote me on this, but I think with the stickers, that was to keep everybody 6 feet apart, and we were still masking. I think that was the issue. And so, I mean, we could certainly try to get a little bit more clarity around this, but I think it's still masking and keeping a distance. Like they also okayed us when we're in our offices alone, working individually, we take our mask off. So I think it's where people gather, the distancing and masking piece. I think that's where there's been perhaps a little bit of confusion around the messaging.
Joanna.
Yeah, thanks. So yes, I was wondering if we did get some clarity. If the question was specifically asked around, what our protocol would be inside the boardroom. The stickers on our desks and the movement of the voting machines to the back room allows us to spread out. But I would think that the boardroom would mimic how our classrooms are functioning, and that's a combination of spacing and masks. So then it just begs the question of, can the speaker take off the mask when they're speaking? And maybe that's how that would be handled. But I think we should get some more clarity around the protocols expected of us. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So I think it's understood that there is some nuance to the conversation, and that direction also can change about the masking or not masking as people, I guess, learn more about transmission and transmission rates and all of that. So Joanna put forward a question of clarification related to being in the boardroom and masking. And to me, there's two parts to that. There's the public health element to it, and then we can also go back to something Andrea said, which is on balance, are we efficient and transparent and relatable in our particular roles in a fully masked or mask and then unmasked when you're speaking context. So I see Curtis and Joanna.
Joanna was first. Go ahead, Joanna.
Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to remind us that also SEAC and the Senate, the Student Senate, were considering eventually the option of having some of the members in the boardroom and some joining virtually. So we do need to consider that also when we're asking public health for their guidance.
So I do believe that we made a commitment to the committees being online or remote. Am I wrong about that? I thought that we had suggested that committees be remote, SEAC and all the other committees. And in terms of clarity for the board meeting, it really is that where possible, remote meetings, if not possible, then mask if indoors, and following the other protocols such as distancing, etc. So it really is a decision that we have whether or not we want to be in the boardroom masked or just switch to online.
Margot, go ahead, and then Andrea.
So just coming back, Curtis, to both what Joanna and you were saying, I seem to recall the conversation happening at SEAC and the discussion about meeting in person. And part of my decision there was led by, you did not have to have your vaccine to come to like that was not part of the protocol. So they asked, you, Joanna and Tracy and Heather would have gotten the same emails. I remember it came through and somebody was asking about what are the protocols to coming to meetings at the board. I guess somebody asked for clarification, and it was said that that is not part of the piece of coming to a meeting. So that was another piece that fits into certain pieces of my decisions.
I'll just jump in. You would have to be vaccinated now. Those things have, with the attestation and everything, they would have to go through a testing process to visit our buildings.
Yeah.
So that part has changed just in the last month.
I know, but I'm telling you that the conversation that went on with SEAC, that did come up. And at that time, it was not compulsory.
Okay. Well,
I don't know.
we may want again. We should be defaulting to public health, not our own committee opinions on things, because they are the health authority. That's my opinion. So they've laid out a priority for us, which is if you have your meetings, you can have if you can do a remote meeting, do it remotely. If you can't have a remote meeting, then you must be masked and distanced. And so we actually can check off number one, we can have remote meetings. That's what they want us to do. So why would we jump to number two when we satisfy number one? That's kind of where my question is. And I understand there's sort of a sense of leadership with regard to there's, in our community and our schools and that sort of thing. But I think public health should trump even that.
Go ahead, Amy. And then we can look to the rest of the group. It seems we have a choice to make at this point in time, as Curtis pointed out. Go ahead, Amy, you're up.
So this is just a logistical question. I'm assuming that if we're not in the boardroom, we'll go back to using the voting mechanisms because you won't have the control panel. For Crestone.
That's a question for Kevin, actually, whether there is a Crestron main control panel that's available for remote.
Okay.
So we would be back to the Google Forms.
That's what I thought. And that's fine. It worked well. I'm sure it was a little bit more babysitting for you guys, but from my perspective, the forms were adequate.
And just another point that I'm sorry to cut in there is that I'm sitting here, I've got the closed captions on, and I know that's what's going on the YouTube channel right now. And actually, it's doing a pretty good job with the captions. And as Kevin has said before, people in the boardroom, the captions can't capture. So we are actually excluding people who have hearing disabilities because they're still working on that. Hopefully we're going to get to the point where we would be able to have the boardroom closed captioning happening. And I know that it's added, I believe, later, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay, would anybody else like to venture in, wade in on this topic? Or offer a different potential outcome than going back to virtual?
Let's go have our meetings down in the stadiums.
Yes.
Yeah, so some of my parent councils meet on their blacktops. Blacktop meeting.
It sounds good for another couple weeks, and while we have daylight. Anybody else? Tanya, go ahead.
Here's where I'm at. Up until now, anytime we've received a query from a parent on a decision we made about health, you know, it could have been masking, it could have been what grade do you mask, how many kids in a classroom. Our standard answer has always been, we defer to public health because they are the experts. So if up until now we've always deferred to public health because they are in fact the experts, we need to continue deferring to them. We cannot treat our board of 11 trustees plus, you know, Curtis and Dave and student trustees any differently than we do the rest of our students. So if public health says X, I opt to do what public health says.
Okay, and what I heard was public health's first choice is that if we can meet virtually, we do. And I believe that's characterizing what Curtis had let us know. And then Andrea had said, yes, we can do that. So therefore, it seems like Tanya going remote at this point in time would fulfill your criteria. And Curtis said that AC and other meetings that are currently taking place will be kind of revisited in that light. And I guess then in terms of moving forward, it will likely be something that Superintendent Blackwell, revisits either month to month or every other month or whatever the case may be, because there is that kind of what's correct and just given what's happening in classrooms kind of thing. There is certainly, I've heard that sentiment from trustees as well. So whenever the time is right then to kind of flip back into the being in the boardroom with or without masking, we'll look to you under director's reports or wherever the case may be to get that direction. Sound okay? Okay. And nobody else is coming on screen, so we will go with that then. So next Wednesday, we'll be remote using our Google Forms for now. And I guess the other update we'll look for is through Kevin, if the technology ever comes online, that we can give Crestron a try as well. Okay, is there any other business? Item 3.5. Go ahead, Margot.
This is a really quick ask because I realized I was supposed to do it earlier and I forget. But if those who have judged for Inspire can go and check one more time, I think we're still short some people for a couple of the nominations, please.
Indeed.
I keep forgetting, so I thought if I do it here, I'll remember and everybody will hear me and not delete the email.
Quick and inspiring reads. Okay, Tanya, go ahead.
Sorry, did we do 3.4.6?
Yes, that's the committee that hasn't had a chance to meet yet. There is no report.
Okay.
But I appreciate you checking because I did skip over some earlier in the meeting. Okay, so seeing no other hands up at this moment in time, are there any trustee questions and comments? Go ahead, Andrea, then Jean.
Yes. So this may not get an answer now, but we in our board has started the menstrual products, the free menstrual products across our board this September, which is absolutely fantastic. I am very proud. But my question is, now that the government has announced their program, are we able to access those products? Will they fit in our dispensers, etc.? And if not, is there any funding we can get? I sense that we may be out of luck. I'm not sure. That's what I'm wondering.
I see Jewel has come on. Jewel, did you want to respond?
Yes, good evening. I can try to respond to that, but I'll have to confirm with Superintendent Nagoy. My understanding, the product that the ministry is procuring through this partnership with Shoppers Drug Mart is different than the product that we are using, and the machines they're using are also different. So we'd probably have to do a sort of field test to assess that. In terms of funding, my understanding from the ministry memo, and this is what I'll confirm with Roxana, is that the program is for boards who had not yet implemented a program on their own. So that's the loophole there. I'll see whether or not there's room for us to squeeze through it. But my understanding is if you've gone out on your own, continue on your own. If you haven't, then boards are welcome to engage in this partnership with Shoppers Drug Mart. But
I'm sorry, I couldn't help but laugh. I think we're all laughing.
I feel a letter coming on.
How bizarre is that? So those boards that were slow to get on board or could not, are going to benefit from a long-term program and have funding available, but those of us that were ahead of the game are going to be penalized because we have to fund our own.
I think that's the way it reads for now, but certainly I had an initial conversation with Roxana about this when the announcement came out last week. I think there's scope for this to be changed in the future, but I think immediately what they're implementing right now is people who had not a plan in place, and those who had budgeted for the year to have a plan in place can continue within that budget. But I think your question is really about future budgets, right? What are we doing for 2020?
Absolutely, yeah. Because it's a 3-year program that they've confirmed so far. And so we get the big Zippo fun. Okay, thank you.
So are there any other, in Committee of the Whole, we try to keep on a certain topic? Are there any kind of follow-ups on that particular topic? Nope, okay. May I just ask, Curtis or Jewel, are we doing any surveying or some kind of work just to ensure that the program that we've implemented is hitting the mark with the people that it's intended to have positive impact for, and accordingly evolving program kind of next year or whenever?
Go ahead, Jewel.
So you're still talking about the menstrual equity program, right, Tracy?
Yes.
So we had surveyed people during the pilot phase. So we launched a pilot in 4 schools, and based on the survey feedback, we made some minor adjustments to how it would be rolled out across the board. I was actually meeting with research this afternoon, and we were discussing whether or not we would continue to collect feedback. Not officially, but certainly because there was a spotlight feature, I think that communications issued today. So I think that the topic is very much in the public eye. Certainly unofficially, we will always accept student feedback in terms of any initiatives that we present, but no more formal feedback. That was only through the pilot phase.
Thank you. Jean, go ahead on another topic, I think. Thanks, Jewel.
Yes, thank you very much. This is a question for Curtis. It's a follow-up to the OPSPA request that we survey our community as a follow-up as to the students' experience with the internet. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. I was asked to reach out to OPSPA to see if they had the capacity to translate that survey. Also, I was to check with OPSPA as to how it's being disseminated in other boards in Ontario. And we did get the answers back to that. There is no translation provided by OPSPA, and I think every board is doing as they see fit. So I was just following up with Curtis, as I know that he was going to discuss this with senior admin as to whether or not the board would help us disseminate this survey. Curtis?
Thanks, Jean. A small group of us met and discussed this item, and good news, we are going to find a way to disseminate this information out to our schools and staff and everyone who needs to participate. And so that's going to happen as soon as we can get the logistics in order.
That's great news. Because I really would like to see that this gets as far and as wide and with as much participation as possible. So I think that that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Curtis.
Okay. I don't see any other trustee questions and comments. I have looked at the spreadsheet and I don't see any new questions from the public either for the meeting tonight. Let's see here. And I would just ask if there are other November Committee of the Whole topics, if people could let me know. So far, we have the discussion that we had earlier around making space for anybody who has questions about striking committee or chair, vice chair elections. Amy had indicated that it may be possible to report back on some wording around what if nobody volunteers or sticks their hand up to be the chair. And Jean, I just want to confirm also that we have the transportation services in Halton Hills and other areas, HSTS discussion coming back to the table. And that's with you and Roxana had that one. No? Yes?
I'll be checking in with Roxana on that. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And Tanya, go ahead.
Sorry, Tracy, were you identifying items to be put on the Committee of the Whole agenda for November?
For November, yeah.
Okay.
And we can go back to, I'll survey all the subcommittees to see who is going to be reporting. So just watch for that as well.
Okay, so perhaps, do we know if there will be any policies being brought forward in November to the Committee of the Whole?
Gail, go ahead.
I believe Roxana has two. They're part of her annual requirement. One, I think, is trustee honoraria, but don't quote me on that. And there is another one that I think she's working in conjunction with the trustees on. So let me circle around and connect with Roxana on those, figure out the timing. And if they're done in time, we'll place them on Tracy's list of agenda items for November.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for raising that, Tanya. And so quickly implementing what we talked about, that's awesome. Okay, and in the interim, things always come up, and what looks like a fairly light agenda now, by the time we get to a week or so out, is often a little bit less light. So please do watch for just that. The draft topics have been coming out just after the board meeting, because we are in a position then to know kind of more fully what the topics may be. So it doesn't leave a ton of time for turnaround about, you know, if you're in or out with subcommittee reports and so on. So just trying to get into that routine a little bit. So seeing no other questions or comments. How did I know? A motion to adjourn from Jean. Is there any discussion on adjourning? David only smiles. We're all good. Okay, all those in favor of adjourning at 8:49 p.m. Hands are raised, and that carries unanimously. Thank you very much.